gratuity for employees. 873 million is added to the Human Settlements Development Grant to rehabilitate houses. 471 million to the Education Infrastructure Grant to repair schools, and 784 million to the Provincial Roads Maintenance Grant to repair flood damages roads in KZN. Next slide. So, members, this table shows the provincial conditional grant increases from 2021 to 2022. The biggest increase is 1.3 billion for the District Health Programs Grant and 1.2 billion for the Human Resources and Training Grant, also in health. The Human Settlements Development Grant receives an additional 853 million in 2022-23, and the Provincial Roads Maintenance Grant is 680 million less than the 2021-22 revised estimate. Just to note, members, this is not changes since the previous MTIF, but it's just the changes from the revised estimates in 2021-22. Next slide. In terms of the local government transfers, changes to this government allocations between 2021 and 22 includes 1.2 billion increase in 2022 from 2021 to the Municipal Infrastructure Grant, and 838 million increase to the Public Transport Network Grant. Amendments over the medium term include the local government equitable share has been increased by 4.2 billion in 2022, 10.5 billion in 23, and 14.2 billion in 24 to expand the provision of free basic services to poor households. The Public Transport Network Grant allocations are reduced by 754 million in 2022-23 and 105 in 2023-24, and is increased by 621 million in 2024. These changes are made to align with the revised implementation plan for phase 2 of the My City project in the city of Cape Town. Next slide. Members, while the budget in 2022 increased the local government equitable share by an average annual rate of 10.3%, it does not guarantee that the needs for indigent households will be sufficiently met. National transfers account for a relative small proportion of the local government fiscal framework, with the majority of local government revenues being raised by municipalities themselves. Poor rural municipalities, however, receive most of their revenue from transfers, while urban municipalities raise the majority of their own revenue. Research by the Public Affairs Research Institute finds that the challenges faced by local government are systematic and are the direct result of the unrealistic assumptions that were made in designing the funding model in the 1998 White Paper on local government. The White Paper assumed that local government could raise over 70% of their financing requirements through service charges, and also made them responsible for providing affordable services to households. Next slide. Members, some of this is a repeat, but we just want to show that in the table, the operating and capital revenue versus the operating and capital expenditure per province. In terms of the revenue, the operating revenue has increased over time, while the capital revenue has decreased over time. On the other side, the percentage spent on operational costs has decreased over time, while capital expenditure has slightly increased. In terms of the narrative, we've covered that in previous slides. Next slide. Next slide. So, members, these two slides is actually just additional to our presentation on the division of revenue. But we just want to illustrate what type of information is available from national departments or the National Treasury for the monitoring of conditional grants. For example, we're using the Comprehensive Agriculture Support Program as an example. So the CASP, the objective of the CASP is to provide post-settlement support to targeted beneficiaries and land reform, and are engaged in value-added enterprises domestically or involved in exports. So what the table is showing is the information that was available for the first 6 months of 2021-22. So if we can just look at the Eastern Cape as an example, we can see that the Eastern Cape has spent 28% of this grant in the first 6 months. They estimated to engage in 80 projects in the white line. The green line shows the actual. So they've only completed 22 of the 80 planned projects. They actually estimated that they're going to support 2,300 farmers, but they only supported 749. In terms of or the farmers was beneficiaries. The next one was the support. They only supported 230 farmers. There was no target set for that. The number of targets that actually access market was 230, is the same as the number that was supported, and no targets were set for that. The number of jobs that they targeted was 576. They actually created 188 jobs within this grant. The number of pre-audit workshops, follow-ups, and final audits was only 8. There was also no target set. The number of monitoring visits planned was 80, and there was no visits concluded. So members, this is just to show the kind of information that is available on a quarterly basis for monitoring purposes. Next slide. So members, in the previous discussion on the Division of Revenue Act, many questions related to getting an understanding of the criteria used for the allocation of conditional grants. So I found this very useful table on the Treasury website in terms of the public transport network grant. The table shows the cities that has an operational public transport system, the percentage that has been spent in 2020, the contribution from the property rates, and also efficiency indicators of this transport systems at this stage. If we can just look at George as an example. So in terms of George, they do have an operational public transport system. They've spent 89% of their budget in 2020-21. They are eligible for incentive, and then further on, coverage of direct costs from the fare box was 18%. 5.1% of the population used the transport, and then 5% of this expenditure was also contributed by property rates. Thank you, members. This is all from my side.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you so much. The last slide, please. The last slide. I think what we're saying, Chair, is that national government departments are required to monitor the financial and non-financial information funded by the budget over time. One of the points that Dr. Landi highlighted earlier, I think raised this before, is around the spending or the allocation that goes to national, that significant part of it indeed goes to transfers, and the oversight mechanisms has to really come up with a way that 70% there's oversight of that as well, because it goes to transfers, and it's very important that oversight, because there are performance indicators that have to be realized by that transfers. The mandate of, we'll talk about that quite in detail during the appropriations discussion. The mandate of the different spheres of government are addressed, and the Division of Revenue considers the various aspects, including demographics and also economic needs and environment within the context of the allocation. Ramped up, I think the point here, just to emphasize the importance of ensuring that government's important information about society or economy remains available at the time, by ensuring that our statistical database or statistical institution is able to collect that information. It's very important that that process is protected all the time. After considering several funding needs in terms of the capacity, service delivery, and economic goals, several amendments were made from the prior year MTF. This includes equitable shares were amendments made, but also within the conditional grants, there were amendments made compared to the previous year. This is the last slide. We have also have additional slides where we provide some of the details on conditional grants. There are also some of the details around the provincial equitable shares, but also under the local sphere, some of the details as well. I think our presentation ends there, Chair. Before I hand it back to you, Chair, and members, I also want to take an opportunity to, tell the committee that as a small team, we're able to get two members joining our team, which I meant to introduce at the beginning of the presentation. Ms. Sibusisiwe Sibeko and Mr. Tsepo Moloi are additional member of the team who joined us this month and last month. That when members see them, hear them, they know that they're part of the team. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Chairperson and all members. We are ready for further engagement in this regard. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doc. Welcome to the new members of PBO. Can they please show their faces? I think we saw Tsepo, but please introduce yourselves again so that we can put names to the faces.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings, honorable members. My name is Tsepo Moloi. I joined the PBO as an economic analyst on the 1st of January. Thank you, Chair.
You are most welcome. Thank you, Ms. Sibeko.
Good morning. My name is Sibusisiwe Sibeko, and I have also joined the PBO in February as a finance analyst.
Okay, thank you. Wishing you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, wishing you safe landing at PBO. Eh?
It's a mixed generation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Team PBO at Doc and your team. All members, it's your turn to indicate.
Peters.
Honorable Peters.
Chair, Honorable Sarupin, please.
Honorable Sarupin. I'm listening, honorable members.
Matafa.
Honorable Matafa.
Mlenzana.
Honorable Mlenzana.
Kaiso.
Honorable Kaiso. Any other member? Okay, other members. I've just received a message from Honorable Tehale. She's struggling to connect. We know there is a load shedding in the country, and even some of the members who are on the platform, they keep on cutting. But let's hope that you look for the most appropriate spaces, especially when you must come in and raise issues on the PBO presentation. So, honorable members, let's do it this way. You have got 5 minutes to raise your issues, and let's take it from there. Honorable Peters, you are the first one.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And I want to take this opportunity to also thank the PBO for the presentation and to thank the Chairperson for being very punctual today, starting the meeting 2 minutes before 9 o'clock. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, I have very few questions. I just wanted to ask the PBO, one of the quick questions that need consistent consideration before we pass this division of revenue bill is whether it effectively addresses the disparities across the provinces and municipalities, because it is important for us to note, and Chairperson, you'd also hear when SALGA make its presentations that they also indicate the challenges that they have and the challenges that municipalities have with regard to revenue collections. And to add to that, I want to know from the PBO whether they think that the municipalities and provinces will ever raise enough revenue to be able to augment the provincial and municipal allocations from the equitable share. The provinces raise revenue from patients fees and motor licenses, but this is not even enough to sustain the very services that the provinces are raising their fees for. And Chairperson, on slide 13, there's an indication that of the number of children who are accessing ECD. I just want to know whether this is corresponding with the number of children in the cohort of the population, in this cohort of the population, as you would know, because we know that by 2024, there is a target of about 3.6 million children to have accessed ECD. But is that target also consistent with the number of children in this cohort? Chairperson, the other question is with regard to slide 20, with regard to the changing shares of the division of revenue from 2008 and 2009, including the debt service cost. Is the PBO aware of how much each sphere of government accounts for the overall debt that the country has? And how indebted is municipalities, especially the metros? And how much of the 2020 division of revenue bill allocation will be directed at servicing debts, not 2020, 2022? The last question, Chairperson. The PTNG was created to make it possible that municipalities could deliver reliable, affordable, and safe public transport in 13 municipalities. As a start, how possible is it that Umsundus, Mbombela, Polokwane, eThekwini, Chairperson, and Rustenburg could spend 100% of the grant, and yet there are no passengers in being transported? So I just wanted to find out from PBO this few questions, Chair, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Peters. Honorable Sarupen.
Thank you very much, Chair, and apologies for the lack of video. I am back in Gauteng where my reception is poor at my house. Chair, I just have one key question around the equitable share and the division of revenue to provinces. What we see in the financial reports coming out of provinces is that a lot of them have overspent, and it seems that provinces might have spent, we'll only know in a couple of weeks, but it looks like provinces might have spent combined by 20 billion rand as a consequence of the cuts to the equitable share in the previous financial year. I'd like to get an understanding from the PBO as to whether or not they think that the now increases in the equitable share to provinces will be sufficient for them to ensure that they meet their mandates. I mean, cutting province, it's easy for national government to cut provinces rather than national government departments when they need to make emergency decisions like we did last year. But there are consequences in healthcare and education that are unforeseen. And that means that provinces can't necessarily just stop paying salaries, for example. And it has become a very serious problem over the last financial year. And if they have looked at this at the PBO, have they identified potentially better areas for national government to trim back on its own expenditure in favor of protecting frontline services by provinces? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Sarupen. Honorable Matafa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, Chair, and honorable members and Team PBO. Chair, I'm going to request to keep my video off. I'm one of those that are struggling with connectivity. Yeah. Chair, I just have a few questions. Actually, I had three. Comrade Dipuo spoke on one, which speaks to the issue of public transport grant. My question is almost similar to the one as raised by Honorable Peters. And the question is, given the stats of passenger uptake that were reflected on the presentation, can we say that public transport grant is value for money in terms of what it seeks to achieve, what it's able to deliver, and what it costs the taxpayer? Because, Chair, I see in some of the cities that were highlighted there, there's an uptake of about 1% of the population. And in some instances, I think it's the city of Cape Town where 3% is the highest performing in terms of customer uptake. Now, the question there is in terms of the value that the taxpayers have to pump in as far as the grant is concerned. Is it something that we can look at its modeling and then maybe include other modes of transport that are related to faring public within the city and maybe even outside of the city boundaries? The second one, Chair, is on the issue of the capacity that is lacking in terms of local government. When you look at implementing of projects related to conditional grants and the performance of ordinary services that are required by local government, issues of revenue collection. In terms of the DORA, is there, like I see there's an increasing expenditure, but are we seeing an increase in funds trying to address this particular issue of lack of capacity in the local government sphere? And the last one, Chair, is something that me being from Tshwane have learned through the workings of Tshwane, and I just wanted to find out from PBO if whether the DORA, in its current nature, will be responsive to the growing trend of municipalities going into debt, municipalities not being able to raise funds in the commercial market. And I'm raising this, Chair, knowing that in our city, and I'm speaking under correction, I'm not sure if the situation has been changed. The city of Tshwane failed to raise its budget shortfall in the debt market because the banks lamented on the fact that it's highly indebted and they do not believe that it's prudent to lend money to the city. Now, the question is that, is DORA flexible enough that going forward, we are able to address such issues to keep these municipalities viable and also to assist plug the gap that may arise as a result of the financial standing that municipalities find themselves for many reasons. It could be COVID, where people are unable to pay funds for their rates and taxes, or any other matter that makes it difficult for the municipalities to remain self-sustaining. Or is there a need for government intervention as far as that is concerned? For now, Chair, I'll pause there on the three questions. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I appreciate the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa. Honorable Lenzana, I hope you are still keeping your spot.
Let's see, Chair. I think so. No, good morning, Chairperson and colleagues. Good morning, Doc, and welcome your presentation and your team. Chairperson, Honorable Dipuo and Honorable Matafa has covered some of my points, but allow me perhaps to restructure one of the questions by Honorable Dipuo. Doc, is this budget needs-based when you look at it? I'm deliberately running away from the terminology that we always want to use of a zero-based budget. I'm not there yet, but now I'm on needs. Is this budget needs-based? Is it not only a question of juggling around numbers, but still remaining with that baseline mentality? Covered with this, would be also what Honorable Matafa has been raising. But as I'm saying, he has covered me as far as that one is concerned. I don't want to harp on what Honorable Matafa has actually said. But my interest, Chairperson, would be, are we advised by FFC that let's adopt this budget because it addresses what we have been crying for, where we would see a budget which is beginning to address the needs of the communities, not based on statistics, but based on what it is that has to be done. Thanks, Chairperson.
Honorable Mlenzana, thank you very much. Honorable Kaiso.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and let me congratulate the PBO for having appointed, in its appointment, considered the generational mix. I think it's a good idea that you bring in the young people in this tough job. But Chair, I'm also covered in number of instances, but I just wanted to go to this area. You see, a healthy nation also brings about an improvement in as far as the production is concerned. So I think my concern, Chair, was on the issue of life expectancy and the child mortality rate, which should not just be counted as statistics that we read and see here put in front of us, but it does say something to us. So I'm sure the PBO's aim was to drive a particular message when this information was brought to our attention. So we definitely have to get somewhat an interaction with that with the department, and also to get to understanding some of the information as to how does this shape in or what has influenced this, because once there is an increase of child mortality rate, it says something which you have to read a bit deeper to it, such that now if there is, it has to do with a certain, constraint in terms of financial, support, etc. We then have to know ourselves as a standing committee on appropriation that perhaps there needs to revamp something. So I think during the course of our operation, we have to get to that point where we look at those, especially the issue of life expectancy and child mortality rate, because it was doing well during the 2019, and then in 2020 it changes. So it says then something has changed drastically. Then that we have to know in as far as the division of revenue is concerned. And secondly, Chair, is on the issue of, I don't know how many times should we sing this song, lack of consequent management, poor financial management. I agree with Honorable Dipu that perhaps some of this we have to get to interact with Salga, for instance, on some of this issue. But then it seems as if it's going to be, it is now has become a tradition that will definitely be encountering this lack of performance management, lack of financial, poor financial management. and then lack of consequent management. So there must be a way that we get feedback now that doesn't say lack of consequent management. It should say consequent management outcome or something like that. That says now that we have been having lack of consequent management, now poor performance has been attended to, and financial management, poor financial management has been attended to, and this poor consequent management has been attended to. So it's a positive feedback. If we're moving forward, the report should not only say lack of consequent management, but should say we are happy now the consequent management is being attended to. There must be a way that as a committee, we have to see these results. Otherwise, if we don't want to see this result, we will be getting this report every time when we meet, we'll be discussing this. Now, the household saving, just suspended due to fiscal consolidation. So I just want to get to know from PBO, what is the consequent results of this in future? Because, household saving is very, very much important in as far as planning. Now that we are doing statistics and all that, so I think it's very, very much important that it is an instrument which is able to assist us. So I just want to know how in future is this going to have impact in as far as you are concerned as PBO. And my last two, I think, Chair, we've said on a number of presentations by PBO and FFC, the issue of, funding model for the local government, the 1998 white paper document. We have said it, expressed this on several occasions, but it doesn't change. I think we will have to interact with the local copter to assist us in this regard, because it can't be right. I know on 2 occasions this matter was presented to this committee, but there is no point where we hear now. Now it has now been taken serious. Now it's going to be looked at. And my last point, Chair, is just on underspending. It is totally unacceptable that we still, especially under the grants, and spend conditional grants that, given the tough time that poor people are undergoing during this, economic downturn, that our people are still finding it very difficult to go to job because there is no transport. And then there are grants which are being dispersed but not spent. It's a very serious problem. It's an indictment on us, seeing that we are also moving forward to, to elections, and then we still encountering this problem. We have to seriously look at this point. I know at some stage, as a committee, we interacted with these municipalities, but I think it is very important that this matter, it is being attended to, it is being looked to, taken very, very, very much serious. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kaisom. Honorable Sheikh.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to PBO for your comprehensive presentation. Chairperson, what all our honorable members are asking, and a lot of what I'm going to be asked, is exactly the same thing we've been asking for the last couple of years. And we're not getting the responses that we need, not from PBO, but in terms of ensuring that after having identified the weaknesses and the challenges that we experience, And like one of my honorable colleagues just said about consequence management, but more importantly, about improving so that we are able to then take a problem and turn it into a solution and provide better services. We're really not getting the Chairperson. It's getting progressively worse over a period of time, I must admit. But my first question to PBO is, what is your view on ensuring, first of all, a more transparent process of procurement at all spheres of government? And when I say this, I mean specifically where the public, and I'll give you an example, in a local municipality, must know on every procurement that is done, published in its local media or a bulletin, who contracts were issued to, what is the value of the contracts, what is the price per item, because we continue to lose hundreds of billions of rands in this country. And the same must go as far as the services that they are actually serving, providing to our people on the ground. And when I say this, people raise concerns year in and year out about some of the problems you've got. And I'm going to give you a good example. If you look at the state of eThekwini municipality right now, it is shocking. Shocking is an understatement. They don't even have money to pay the security. That entire beach area, which is a tourist attraction, if you look at the crime levels there, it has rocketed. If you look at the streets, it's shocking. If you look at the supply of water, it's shocking. Now, it's deteriorating over a period of time. And one of the reasons for that is, like my colleague have just said, consequence management. How do you envisage we need to deal with this differently, given the fact that whichever political parties, wherever they govern, are putting in their own people there and are reluctant to ensure this consequence management? How do we go forward in terms of trying to find a solution? Now, I know we've been speaking about zero-based budgeting, but the question is, and I think I've asked this before, do we have the capacity at these different spheres of government to be able to enter into zero-based budgeting? Because all this time, I think they've been thumb-sucking in terms of figures. When funds are released, they don't have the capacity to be able to spend this. Another serious problem appears to be irregular expenditure, because there is provision for it. You will find that they abuse it and then they go and regularize it. And do you think we should still have a provision for irregular expenditure unless it's an absolute emergency? Not if somebody is deciding, I'm getting married and I need some money, so let me go and get somebody to do the potholes in the area. So that is my other question. Now, municipalities, and I'm not sure if anybody's covered it because Chair, I must apologize, I was also simultaneously in another meeting. You know, municipalities are now disconnecting services because they are not getting paid. Okay, and I can understand the problem there. But what is your view when you reverse that? Do we have the right to demand that people must pay for services, you know, and you don't provide the service to them? A good example is, if you don't ensure there's a secure environment, the streets are clean, there is water and sanitation available, but you demand we must pay rates and taxes. What is your view on that? Shouldn't be a give and take, that we're paying you for a service, you have the responsibility to pay. Now, how do you believe public representatives can play a pivotal role in ensuring that we change and improve the quality of life of people? Because I want to tell you, just before the election, my ears were sore, my eyes were sore with what we were hearing about. All the prospective candidates were saying they promised, but they've already received their first salary. Nobody's saying anything anymore. They've gone into hibernation. The role that public representatives play, not about going and fighting each other in these government structures, but to come together. What is your view? What should we do to put the people first rather than coming and grandstanding and finding faults? We need solutions to the problems that our people are experiencing on the ground currently. Now, Chairperson, my other question is this, that we are allocating these budgets to these municipalities. We know, and other spheres of government, we know a very great percentage of this money is going towards administrative costs. How do you want us to change this? Because Chairperson, 79% sort of every rand is going to compensation to employees and debt service cost, Chairperson. I know you are reminding me to get off. I'm finishing this one, Chairperson.
No. You're still okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then of the 21 cents remaining, Chairperson, my estimation is 11 cents is going towards corruption. So we are delivering services with 10 cents in the rand, with a population increase in this country of 1 million people a year. And we are not doing enough to create a conducive environment, Chairperson, so that people can be productive, particularly your rural municipalities and things. What is PBO's suggestion so we can take development to these areas? Let municipalities be more self-sufficient. Let each one regard themselves as an own business, an own entity, and start looking after its people in its community. You know, Chairperson, I'm just confronted with something in terms of the sugar tax. We put in sugar import tax on sugar, Chairperson, in this country. And what did we do it for, Chairperson? We did it to protect the local growers, am I right? But Chairperson, it's not protecting the local growers. Can I tell you what? Our imports from Eswatini, because there is no import duty, has increased, Chairperson, by 1 billion rand. How is it helping your local growers, Chairperson? Maybe PBO should answer some of those questions. I got many others, but I think I'll rest, Chairperson.
No, you can continue. Continue, Honorable Sheikh, if you have got.
Well, yeah, you know, Chairperson, you know, my concern is the president has said a hell of a lot in the State of the Nation, and some of which he said is brilliant. Okay, but does this budget speak to what the president is saying? Or are we saying something, but we are going to be able to do something? Now, remember, the president has spoken, Chairperson, about 100 days, and many days are gone already. Particularly if you look at the manufacturing sector at this point in time. I don't see a comprehensive plan, Chairperson, to be able to improve that sector. Now, once upon a time, if you remember, Chairperson, we had the trade and industry did a presentation to us, and they spoke about manufacturing, and they were bragging about the automotive industry. And the question we asked them, but what about the other sectors? Don't talk about where there's an increase, because all of them should have an increase and be able to create jobs and things and create an export market. Now, in the absence of a comprehensive plan after engagement with labor and everyone else, only would you be able to put a proper plan in place to bring down the cost of doing business so that businesses can survive. I'm not seeing that, Chairperson. All I am seeing is this. There's another example I want to give you. As a result of this war, South Africa should have been taking advantage of it. We have beautiful, fertile land with resources. But what, Chairperson? We are importing all our wheat from Ukraine and Russia, and yet we can grow our own wheat. What are we doing about things of this nature? I just feel we say something, we don't have the passion. And one of the reasons I say this, Chairperson, is we are too busy attacking each other, Chairperson. My plea is, how do we get everybody together to understand the future depends on us working together to find solutions, not just criticizing all the time. Let me stop there for now, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sheikh. Let me just check, Honorable Peters, do you have something that you'd like to add? Honorable Sarupen? Anything that you'd like?
Chair, nothing further from me, thanks.
Thank you. Honorable Matafa?
I'm okay, Chair. Thank you very much.
Honorable Lenzana?
No, thanks, Chair. I'm fine.
Okay. Honorable Kaiso?
Yeah, just one, Chair. I just want to check with the PBO. What has been the impact of fiscal consolidation on household consumption and the economy as a whole? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiso. If I may come in at the tail end. Again, let me appreciate the presentation by Team PBO. Let me start with this one. It talks to the revenue that is being raised at local government. And that's the reason that we use for giving the lowest percentage to local government as far as the equitable share is concerned. So here's my question. You would know that many towns, especially in Mpumalanga and KZN, are so much dependent on coal. What do you think the impact of the transition to clean energy is going to be as far as the capacity of those towns to raise their own revenue? And in your own assessment, do you think that enough is being done to make sure that that capacity is not being undermined? Obviously, that talks to unemployment and so on and so forth. I hope you get my my question. This is a broad question. The budget that we deal with at the end of the day would like to see its impact on unemployment, on poverty and inequality. But as we are seated here, we know that those indicators are going the wrong direction. Would you say that is a function of the budget, of the DORA, or are there other variables that perhaps you think are even more are having more weight than this? So just to repeat, I'm saying all said and done, when we deal with the budget, we'd like to see its impact on poverty, on inequality and unemployment. But as we know, the indicators are going the wrong direction. Is that the function of the budget, or there are other variables that also play a very critical role? If there are, which are those? And if you think the budget, what can be done better with the budget? Yeah, you made a point about that some of the indigents don't get what a parliament approves. What's the reason for that, and what can be done to correct that situation? Dr. Naylor, on slides 23 and 24, the division of revenue, I would like you to go back and take us through again those slides. I think I missed out something so that I can just get exactly the points that you are making there on slides 23 and 24. Local government gets 9.8% of the national raised revenue. But then we talk about all these other conditional grants again, which go to local government. Two questions from that. Then the 9.8 is not the true reflection of the money that comes from national government to local government. I would like to hear your comment. And secondly, the conditional grants way of doing things, do you think that it is serving its purpose, even if you're assuming that it's being used? So I would like you to just comment on the conditional grant. So there are two questions which came from that. Dogotela and your team, please come in.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, and honour members for the many questions. Thank you so much for that. I'll start with some of the questions, and some of the questions obviously require us to go back and do some further research. But whichever one we didn't answer, we'll do it in writing, and we'll ask Darren to remind us as well. And I'll just start, and Dr. Lani will come in, and Dr. Mohammed will come in, and the colleagues will come in if there aren't any unanswered questions from that perspective. My point is to quickly touch on the local government fiscal framework. I think various honour members touched on that, so I'll just lump it up together. I think there's certainly a need to have a very clear discussion around local government fiscal framework, because that's where we would really have a sense of what are available resources vis-a-vis what needs to be done to local government, and that will really raise a lot of questions around the capacity, deal with the governance issues of the local government and so on. And I think we've raised this before, the need for really discussion around what prohibit fiscal framework, what is a fiscal framework for local government, and what are some of the changes that are required. And we all agree on that, because in one of the study we did for the appropriations at CF committee, we tried to look at the revenue at local government, and you realize that certainly some of the more metro district, or particularly metro, have huge capacity to raise revenue compared to the other local government. But I think the broadly fiscal framework at local government requires discussion and also thinking around where which areas need to improve to ensure that the local government is able to realize its mandate as set out in the constitution. And that's the point that we emphasize and keep emphasizing. The point around whether the revenue, are there enough capacity to raise revenue? We've seen over the time that particularly that revenue at local government is largely linked to the household or the ability for the consumptions or spending by businesses. Anything happens to that, we'll see even during the COVID-19 that the fact that many households could not afford to pay, that would have had a bump towards the local government revenue in that regard. Compared to provincial government, I think one of my there is an issue of whether provincial government, local government are raised enough. Provincial government is probably a smaller portion of their spending funded by their own revenue compared to local government. So the bigger chunk of it is at the local government. Just a quick response to the ECD statistics. I think the 2021 MIT data shows that there are actually 5.7 million children between the age of 0 and 4 years. So you can see that our target is far, it's a bit less than that. But obviously, there's been an issue of population growth since the NDP target was about in that regard. But I think added to that, we've certainly seen that the earlier indication, particularly during COVID and post-COVID-19, we've seen that there are more children actually staying at home compared to actually being in an educational institution at that age. And it's a worrying factor already that there are more of the children actually not able to benefit from the early childhood development program. But hopefully that when it moves to education, there'll be more ability to access those. But there is a worrying factor. There is actually more children not able to access that. But that could mean some of the issues during COVID-19, meaning that many parents stay at home, and many of the caring have to be done by parents, but also the issue of affordability in that regard. The other point that comes is around the budget cut. I think what National Treasury does, as our conversation here with other colleagues at that time, is that look, they tell the budget holders that we need to cut budget by this much, and you need to go and cut and tell us how much we'll cut in the budget. But I think what we've said for Chair and members as PBO, we say, look, there has to be a question of when government provides the implications for the budget cuts, what it means for sensitivity, what it means for the needs. Because certainly our approach and what I want us to do, spend a lot of time on, is really trying to look at the vis-a-vis the realization of these aspirations. And clearly, the human development indicators, that shows that there has been improvement in some of the areas, but recently we've seen quite a worsening of some development indicators. And the question would be, does that relate to the reduction in spending government, where we've seen some areas, critical areas where expenditures come out quite down, even lower, lower than the inflation, which leads to a cut into the expenditure. And that really leads me to the point about the budget, the needs of is it the needs-based budget? Our initial indication in the slides, we've realized that there's actually more needs that have come up quite a lot, but some have not been realized. And there has to be that realization that some of these proposals might actually not be enough for the budget to realize some of, or for society to realize some of those aspirations to reduce the socio-economic indicators in that regard. I think I will leave it there, and I'll ask Dr. Orlando to come in, and then and Dr. Mohammed will come in. Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. Dr. Orlando?
Thank you, Dumisani. I don't know if Darren can just share the presentation again to talk to slides 23 and 24. Just to explain again.
Darren?
Okay. Thank you. Slide 23 is the previous one, Darren, please. Yeah, this one. So, Honorable Chairperson, when we just look at the exact amounts that how the revenue has been divided in terms of the Division of Revenue Act, if you calculate the shares in terms of the allocations, you will see that, in fact, national sphere is allocated 67% of the entire budget that is available for division. The provincial is 28 and local government 4.4. But then on a national level, they do another subdivision in terms of the conditional grants, because that 67% includes the conditional grants that will still be allocated to provinces and to local government. It also includes the debt service cost, it includes the general fuel levy, and it also includes the equitable share that will be allocated or further subdivided to local government. So initially, this is how the Division of Revenue Act actually allocate the funds. And then on the next slide, we illustrate that of that 67% of the national share, it's been divided again, and then the remaining proportion at the national level is 49% after they've transferred funds in terms of the conditional grants and the equitable share to local government. So if you include the conditional grants on a provincial level, it amounts to 41%. So that a proportion of that comes from the national sphere of government. So then provinces receive 41%, and that includes the conditional grants and the equitable share. And within that 41%, then what the provincial government receive, 82% of that is allocated in terms of the equitable share, which mainly funds education, health, a small proportion for social, and in terms of the equitable share formula. And then the conditional grants are just the normal conditional grants, which is also mainly for education, health, and transport, and also agriculture are the main conditional grants for provinces. And then local government, after they've received the conditional grants, the total amount that they received from the main budget without debt service cost is then 9.1%. And within that 9.1% that local government receives, 57% is allocated in terms of the equitable share, which is mainly for providing free services to the vulnerable families. And 31% of that 9% is allocated in terms of conditional grants. Obviously, the grants, the allocations that has got conditions attached to it. And then those amounts will then be transferred from the national sphere of government to provincial and local government. So we can even look at the next slide where we show that 69% in the next slide, Darren, 69% of the provincial sphere are actually transferred to.
Next slide, please. Okay, yeah.
So 69% of the total allocation to national votes are transferred to provincial government in terms of conditional grants, to local government in terms of the local government equitable share and conditional grants, but they also transfer to other institutions like the state-owned enterprises or non-profit institutions or universities, for example. And then the next slide, we show that the national departments that only transfer to provinces and local government. This now excludes the other transfers to institutions. So it's just almost like telling the story and the breakdown in terms of all the different shares from the initial allocation in terms of the division of revenue. So I'm not sure if that is clear, Honourable Chairperson. You're satisfied? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Olandi. Dr. Mohammed, are you in, or should I just give to other team members? Just come in, Dr. Mohammed.
Yes, I am in. I want to apologize beforehand, and I'm going to turn off my video
That's fine, Dr.
Mohammed. Just to say that problems today. I'm going to be very quick and not as comprehensive, and it'd be a good chance to get, as some members refer to our new members as younger PBO staff. We'll give them an opportunity. And just to say, when you get to our age, everybody starts looking younger. So we shouldn't underestimate them and their abilities based on how young they look. I just wanted to deal with some of the issues, and just to say, you know, the AGSA has pointed to serious delivery problems within local government, and I think we mentioned it, but you know, less than 30% of municipalities are submitting credible financial statements for audit. That was in the 2019-2020 financial year. They say 126 municipalities, almost half, adopted unfunded budgets. And so the question that comes up is, you know, why, in spite of the existence of existing regulatory and institutional frameworks, are municipalities still struggling to satisfy the basic service needs, collect outstanding accounts, and repeatedly passing unfunded budgets? And yes, that the challenges faced by local governments are systemic, and as we said in this presentation, that perhaps they are based on unrealistic assumptions that were made in designing the funding model way back in 1998 in the white paper on local government. and I think the research that we've seen says that it overestimated the amount of revenue local governments could raise, and it assumed that they could raise over 70% of their financing requirements. And this has, I think, had a cumulative impact over a long period of time, and causing budgetary transfers to local government to be inadequate, even if they have in many periods been increasing. and sometimes increasing more because of need over certain periods, it should be seen within that broader context. There's also the issue of then the question was asked about why aren't indigent households getting their services, and the millions of households that are eligible for free services do not get them because local governments provide these only to households that register as indigent and are approved by local governments. However, the criterion system of identifying and registering eligible households seems to be dysfunctional. And also, I don't know how important this is as a factor, but I think I'll raise it anyway, is that the money that's transferred that then don't get spent on these households that aren't signed up as eligible or aren't given the go-ahead to get those free services, that money goes into back into the local government and they possibly spend it on other things. So and again, I just want to stress, I don't know how much of a factor that is, and we need to do more research on that. We're seeing, huge amounts of total debt owed to municipalities. A large share of this is coming from households, and we worried that one of the reasons that households aren't paying is because so many households that should be eligible but aren't registered are now having to make a trade-off between paying their bills, which can be, like 400 Rand a month for electricity, 200 Rand a month for water, when the household income of many households in South Africa is below that in total. And so there's unaffordability, but also many households are having to make a choice between whether to pay for food and school or whether to pay for those services. And so I think that's an area linked to the systemic problems that need to be sorted out, and then to think about how those problems affect the ability of local governments to manage. We always hear the issue of wasteful expenditure, inadequate skills, corruption, etc. But I think those problems get exacerbated by and compounded by the difficult task of having to manage the balance between providing affordable services, but also collecting revenues and struggling to collect revenues, and then getting over a long period of time potentially inadequate transfer. So I'm going to stop there, and the more specific questions I'm going to leave to my other colleagues as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohamed. Busisiwe, Jonah, come in and in that order, and Tsepo and Rashad. Thanks.
Thank you for that. So I'll just respond to a few of the issues raised. I think critically, the issue of early childhood development is one that we should be looking at closely. As members would remember, last year there was an announced relief funding that would be allocated to basically save the ECD sector, and 15% of ECD centers were actually at risk of closing shop for good. And to note that, some of the reports are saying that only 36% of that money was actually delivered to those ECD centers. So in thinking about how many students are going to, are eligible or are in this cohort, it's also about thinking about the impacts COVID-19 has had on the sector itself, because you will have more students in the medium term, but at the same time, how many ECD centers will we really have if the money has not provided the relief that it was expected to provide? And as of before the budget, it was estimated that about 300 million, I think it was, would go back to National Treasury, which hadn't been allocated to these ECD centers. So there's also this question about money that is announced and how it actually is implemented in that sector. And of course, ECD is critical for the unpaid care work that we talk about that women and girls largely undertake. I think in terms of the public transport, the value for money question, it's really a question about where and who is the service providing to, because ultimately it's your value for money are people who don't necessarily have access to large public transport system. I mean, if you look at the Western Cape and look at the MyCity, where it goes, it does not go to Khayelitsha, where we might have higher value for money. So also when we think about these value for monies in terms of public transport, something to deeply consider. And I think there's more to be said about that, but I'll just stop there for that. I think in terms of the general household survey, and in terms of data, this is a critical concern because a number of surveys, and it's not just the general household survey, it's a number of surveys by Statistics South Africa will be discontinued, which has massive ramifications for data-led policy making as well as oversight, because when we look at at the local level and think about who has access to electricity or not, we will not have this data anymore in a detailed fashion. They haven't suspended completely the survey, but they've suspended the detailed version of the survey, so we might see still an outcome there. But in terms of statistics, South Africa and the budget cuts, there are real concerns around oversight and the policy-making process as well. I want to respond quickly to the question about life expectancy and child mortality, and to say that these questions are really, we have to look at it in a geographic fashion, right? Spatial apartheid has a real implication or for why certain life mortalities are lower and higher in different areas. So in the Western Cape, for example, low birth weight, at birth, when children are born and have a low birth weight, it's largely children who are Black, it's largely children in urban areas. And so then the solution would be to say, how do we provision, pregnant women with better access to nutrition, to food, to money, to income? So the solutions there would be different. So I want to say that it's not a drastic shift from 2019, 2020 budget per se, but how do we think about the ecosystem of health, outcomes, and over time, what are the changes to, people's health broadly and the conditions that exacerbate those situations. And so to say, we'll probably have to think up, to provide you with more data about what is driving these various data, child mortality in various locations and the driving factors thereof, which would warrant different solutions. And then the last comment is to say, I think, we talk about underspend and overspend, and both these things happen in the same context, right? So we know that over 6 billion was underspent by municipalities, which went back to National Treasury. But at the same time, there's some municipalities that are overspending in certain sectors. And I think what also needs to be asked or thought about deeply is the net effect, actually, when you've got both of these elements occurring simultaneously. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Over to you, Tsepo.
Thank you, Tsepo. Jonah Kamil.
Thank you very much, Chair and honorable members. I think I'll be quite brief, given that my fellow colleagues have covered much of the points. But just to re-emphasize the point, and honorable members also alluded to the mere fact that there's a need to rethink the funding model, particularly as we spoke about the assumptions that were made in the 1998 white paper on local government, because a huge part of the challenges here has to do with the systemic problems as it relates to the funding structure that was put in place. There was also comments about, for example, the state of municipal finances, which we know as well is a big challenge. And the National Treasury has also indicated that the total debt that has been owned by municipalities is to the tune of 261 billion. And of this total figure, we do know that households account for the bulk of this debt. And this simply indicates that poor households are struggling to pay for the ever-increasing services charges. And I think, therefore, the conversation about unpaid bills by households and the poor revenue connection by municipalities themselves should also be considered within the country's broader macroeconomic context of extreme poverty, high unemployment, continued spatial apartheid, as well as corruption. And yeah, to finally say that I think if these systematic financial and operational challenges are not addressed, then government would simply be setting up municipalities for failure. I think in the past, and some of the honorable members also alluded to this specific aspect about, I think the norm has always been to pinpoint solely the blame on local government and present them as being incompetent, corrupt, and inefficient. And I guess perhaps the broader questions we should all ask ourselves is, why have we allowed the system, this dysfunctional system? And when I mean dysfunctional system, I mean both the financing and the operational aspect of it to continue operating for this long. Thank you.
Thank you, Tsepo. Rashad, do you want to come in?
No, I have nothing to add. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Before I give you back to Chair, I just want to also conclude by some of the few comments, few remarks.
Dumisani?
Yes, Nelia.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add one thing that I didn't say is in terms of also the discussions with the Treasury in terms of the division of revenue. One of the officials indicated that the money isn't used for what the purpose for that specific grant or equitable share was. But I also went back to the database and I checked the structure of municipal budgets. But the structure of how the budget is actually set up, it doesn't really provide for this transfer the municipality receives from the National Department of Water Affairs for a specific grant. It's almost like all the money that is transferred from all the different national departments, provincial departments, the National Treasury, is received in one item. Transfers received or is the name of the item. So to me, it is obvious that it actually loses its purpose if it's just allocated or transferred into one specific budget item. I'm not sure if I'm correct. The Treasury may be able to assist us with this, but on the database, that is basically what happens. So the money that's get transferred in the bank account of the municipality actually loses its purpose. So how does the municipal manager know that this 10 rand that they receive for water and sanitation must be spent on water and sanitation? So it's just a technical thing that I've actually noted when I looked at the structure of the budget of municipalities.
Thank you so much, Lilia. Chairperson, our study really, which I said we did on revenue last year, local government revenue, it did really show that the municipal revenue is sensitive to household income and business income within the area. And really, the point about change of economic activity in a particular area will have impact on the ability of the municipality revenue to fund its operating expenditure. And the question about the transition from the renewable or from the coal to renewable, it raised a question about the discussion, as I said earlier on, about fiscal framework with the local government. Because clearly there will be new industries. Firstly, we expect them to raise, but also that what does that mean for those revenue that were seen as crucial for local government service delivery? So certainly our study shows that the municipality revenue, it is sensitive to the economic activities within the local area in particular. One of the points, Chair and members, I want to raise here, it's really an issue of recognizing that some of the challenges within the intergovernmental fiscal framework or intergovernmental relations, it is really inherent to the system that we have. Because when you look at the literature, the point that we raised last week in the NCOP strategic discussions, it was the point around understanding that the entire system, the system that we have of governance, has inherent limitations to it. In particular, the fact that we have 3 spheres of systems, there are some of the challenges that we talk about from this morning, we talk about regularly, they are inherent to the fact that we have 3-tier system. When you look at the discussion, I mean, I've done some work here, look at the literature here. Certainly, some of the emphasis, firstly, there are fewer countries around the world which has 3-tier systems. We're one of those countries. But one of the main challenges, there's 3 that I raised last week. Firstly is that the nationally developed policies in the 3-tier systems are not always implemented at the other spheres of government due to mainly in part the fiscal power contestations and weaker coordination between the 3 spheres. There clearly need to be a very strong coordination between the 3 spheres. Otherwise, the local government will always have to pick up the bigger chunk of the challenges that affect the entire system. And I think one of the points raised by FFC last week, which was very important, which I want to emphasize around the post-elections, local government elections that we've seen dynamics change in the local government, and such political dynamics or societal dynamics does in a way affect the municipalities to deal with some of the challenges they have, or it leads to more fiscal power contestations that we've seen over the years. Also emphasized in the literature. The capable local government sphere is very important in the 3-tier systems, and also to be able to realize the nationally determined outcomes or nationally determined aspirations. So we need to have a very capable local government. And clearly, there's a lot of evidence that we need to strengthen capacity, both technical capacity, but also administration capacity of the local government to deal with it. As over and above, have discussion around fiscal framework itself at the local government. The 3-tier system itself requires a very important cooperation between the provincial and the local sphere of government to ensure that fiscal power contestations get minimalized, to ensure that the local government has quite a bit of an ability to able to implement the service delivery complexity and governance measures in place. And also the fact that local government, there's a point that raised about the spending on employment expenditure. It is the point. Local government and provincial government will have a bigger expenditure on cost of employment because that's where bulk of the services is delivered, and that's you'd expect it that way. But I guess this brings to the point about I saw yesterday, I was going through some of the presentation. National Treasury has done some expenditure reviews, which really talks to the point about irregular and how much are we able to get a bulk for our spending. And there is quite evidence that shows that there are areas where spending is actually less efficient. And as you said before, I would really encourage the committee to invite the GTEC and National Treasury to share some of the outcomes of the spending reviews to show that actually there is some wastage, some of the system where you need to make sure that, I mean, one example I was given there, you find that in a particular province, they've paid twice for a price of a laptop than what it normally costs in a normal states. Last point, before I give back, is the issue of the impact of DORA in society. The government expenditure should be seen beyond just rent and cents. And it's a point that we emphasize and emphasize that should be seen beyond that, should also be seen as an economic enabler, but also dealing with some of the challenges that we have, socioeconomic challenges, ensuring stability in the economy, dealing with some of the socioeconomic, but also largely as an economic activities to enable the economy to grow. And I think if we see it that way, it becomes important to recognize the importance of spending some of these critical areas as we have emphasized. But having poverty, high unemployment, it does have an adverse effect for economy of a society and broadly. I think I'll stop there, Chair. I think we've answered a lot of the questions, and we're able to take further inputs in this regard. Thank you so much, Chair, on other members. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doc. Dr. Siraj, just jump onto the last, because Dr. Janchis has started dealing with it, but I think more can come in there. I said the worsening of unemployment, poverty levels, and inequality. How much is that the function of the budget or even the division of revenue bill? So do you want to come in there?
Were you talking to me, Honorable Chair, to Siraj?
Yeah. Yes, Siraj.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Looking at all the factors that affect, the overall operation of the economy, and then how that affects different households in different parts of the country. But I think over time, and I think maybe it was even as early as 2017, National Treasury did say that fiscal consolidation has been a factor in constraining GDP growth. It was within the budget review, I believe, in that year, and PBO did quote it subsequently in one of the amount that's spent on providing services, ensuring functions of the households related to the transfers and support given to households, and the fact that there hasn't been universal and comprehensive social security, I believe does impact on the overall growth rate of the ability of people to contribute. And so over time, inadequate spending, building on the legacy of colonialism and apartheid, at this point, I'd have to go into the literature and maybe do some calculations to give you the percentages and what we think the impact has been, but also to say that has been different across different areas, and as my colleague Busi said,
Dr. Siraj?
And note the differential high. Yes.
I don't know what happened.
Are you able to hear me?
No, we're really struggling. You were quite audible at the beginning. Now we were losing you all the way.
Sorry. I am getting a message that my internet is unstable on Zoom when I'm speaking. So maybe I should stop and if one of my other colleagues want to come in, we've got a better connection and add to what I've said. I apologize, Chair.
No problem. Any of the PPO team would like to add on what Dr. Janchis and Dr. Siraj had said on the matter? You don't have to.
Do you want to add, Rashad? Do you want to add? Rashad?
No, I have nothing to add. Thank you.
All right. No, thank you, Chair. We'll stop there, but we'll expand in writing in some of the specific points. Thank you so much. We do apologize. The load shedding has took us off quite a bit. Thanks.
Yeah. It impacts this load shedding thing impacts all our lives.
Yeah, I do apologize. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay. Dr. Janchis and the team, thank you very much for the input, and also like to thank the honorable members for their questions and their comments on the.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
I saw Honorable Shurapen. He had his hand up, unless they are listed.
Is that Honorable?
Honorable Shurapen.
Honorable Shurapen, please come in.
Chair, no, I was covered by a letter comment by one of the PBO members, so I took my hand down. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now, I was saying then this brings to an end the presentation by PBO, but we are still continuing with our message. Thank you very much, colleagues from PBO. We are still continuing with our meeting. The next agenda item is let's look
Thank you so much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the minutes. Let's go to the minutes, honorable members. Can we go to the minutes of the 24th of February, 2022? They were sent to us. Do I have the mover for the adoption of the minutes?
Matafa, I move, Chair.
Yes, Matafa. Can I have the seconder?
Seconded, Chair.
Honorable Mlenzana, second. We'll adopt the minutes of the 24th of February, 2022. Can we go to the minutes of the 1st of March, 2022? They were also sent to us. Mover for the adoption if there's no correction.
Chair, I move for adoption of the minutes.
Honorable Taiso is moving for the adoption. Seconder.
Mlenzana.
Honorable Mlenzana seconds for the adoption of the minutes. The minutes of the 1st of March 2022 are duly adopted. Can we go to agenda item number 6? Darren, any announcements from your side?
Chairperson, yes, just a reminder of tomorrow's meeting with the FFC. FFC will brief the committee on the division of revenue bill. I'm going to send the link before 12.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Darren. From my side, honorable members, the team is preparing for oversight. Our oversight trip to Gauteng, and there's information that they need from us. As you know, there are a lot of processes in terms of approval of that. Can you please make sure that they get all the information that they require from us? Is that fine, Darren?
Yes, Chairperson, that is fine. Thank you.
Yeah. So that we can finalize that. That was agenda item number 6. This takes us to the end of the meeting. And once again, thank you very much to everybody who was on the platform. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. See you tomorrow or in the afternoon. Cheers.
In the afternoon, Chair. Thank you. Yeah. What do you think?